I got on the flight. They said, and when you get on the flight, you may sit wherever you want. We got to get this flight through immediately. The weather is breaking. We want to shoot a flight through. And because I have a first-class mentality, ain't nobody saying nothing. I sat in first class. Sat next to a gentleman, white gentleman. He had this terrific mane of hair. Sat next to me. He was out of breath, flustered, frustrated. He looked at me, looked down at his shoes, looked at me, looked down at his shoes, looked at me, looked down at his shoes and said, "Sir, I don't mean to bother you, but I have to tell somebody this story." He said, "I work for the company that lays down runway lights in the international airports of the world." He said, "I had to get to New York today to close a deal." He said, "I called Brussels. I called our offices in Brussels. Brussels called New York, and New York called LA to make sure they got me on this flight." He said, "I am the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and we put the runway lights in this airport, LAX. I called Brussels. Brussels called New York. New York called LA. They got me on the flight." I didn't respond to him. I wanted him to have his moment by himself. But I guess my silence got to him, and he said, but I don't mean to be offensive, but how did you get on the flight?" I said, "I came and they called my name. I waited 11 hours, but they called my name, and here I am." He said, wait a minute. I called Brussels. Brussels called New York. New York called London, and they got me on the flight. You showed up and waited 11 hours, and your name got called." I said, "Yes, sir." And then he looked at me and said, "But what company do you work for?" All right, let's have some church in here now. I looked at him, I said, I work for God and Son. Your company supplies lights for the airports. My company supplies lights for the planets. Your company gets you seat on planes, but my company will make a way out of nowhere. My company will give a barren woman 7 children. My company will cut a hole in the river and make you walk across on dry ground. Now, is there anybody, can we get churchy right here? Is there anybody in the building who can say, "Neighbor, I got stock in that company. I know that company. If I didn't know that company, I'd have been dead a long time ago."